Hi friends, welcome to another video on Tutorials Point with me, Richa. Today in this aviation module segment, we are going to talk about customer service. Well, customer service for a cabin crew is the most important part of their duty and responsibility. So let's see what is there on the agenda for us today. Well, we are going to talk about cabin crew duty for passenger service and what exactly is their duty and responsibility towards a passenger. Passenger service on ground and passenger service after takeoff, we are going to talk about the same. Understanding the kitchen of the galley, rather the galley which is known as a part of the aircraft which is the kitchen. In-flight catering and how does that happen. Meal services, beverage services, trash collection, etc. So I'm very excited to teach you on this particular module on customer service. Well, there are two roles of a cabin crew. One is the primary role and the other is the secondary role. Let's understand what they are. The primary role of the flight attendant is the most important role, making sure that the safety of the passengers is always kept in mind. There are instances wherein even if there is no service in a particular airline, an airline still has to have a minimum crew requirement of 4. So it is very important that the primary role of a cabin crew is to take care of the safety of the passengers. Well friends, the secondary role of the cabin crew is to make sure that the comfort of a passenger is there. Cabin crew members are the face of the airline, they are the brand ambassadors. They are expected to excel in customer service and they are always supposed to remain friendly even if they are dealing with a irritating or rather a disruptive passenger. You always need to have a smile on your face whenever you are dealing with passengers. Well, there are typical work duties for passenger service and that happens before takeoff as well as after takeoff for a particular cabin crew. Now, when a cabin crew joins a particular airline, during the initial training period, she will be undergoing at least 1 month of training only on passenger service with regards to how to serve a particular passenger, how to remove the tray from a passenger, how to do tea coffee service, etc. She undergoes really extensive amount of training on customer service. Well, a catering service is very important for any airline because that is where the food comes from for the passenger who's traveling in a particular airline. So an airline meal or airline food, plain food or in-flight meal is a meal which is served to a passenger on board the aircraft on a commercial airline. Well, most of the military aircrafts or any other kind of cargo aircraft, for example, do not have meal service. But wherever there is a commercial airline going, there has to be a meal service. These meals are prepared by specialist airline catering services. Now, each and every airline have their own requirement or set vendors who does catering service for that particular airline, and these caterers have been with the airline for many years and they exactly know how to function for that particular airline. Certain things that we need to keep in mind in terms of duties of passenger service, certain logistics for catering requirements, material demand forecasting, equipment sector, sourcing of the products, whatever is the different kind of meals or products you require, contracting the suppliers who are going to be giving you these meal services, transportation of the stock or how it is transported from the catering place to the airline, and last but not the least, the warehousing of stock. Well, it is important that wherever the food or the meals are coming from, there has to be a warehouse which is stocking all of these meals before it goes into the aircraft. Well, airline have certain contracts for the caterers. Let's look at them. Consistency of food product. Any caterer who is serving or giving service, any kind of catering service to a particular airline, the airlines have certain mandatory requirements and they need to make sure that the food quality is consistent. Food products which are offered are on consistent basis. Accuracy of uplift. If an airline requires, for example, 250 meals and out of which 200 are vegetarian and 50 are non-vegetarian meals, the airline caterer has to make sure that he's uplifting accurate number of the meals which are required so that there is no goof up on the airline. There has to be an on-time delivery. For example, friends, if an airline is supposed to take off at 6 o'clock in the morning from Mumbai to Delhi, the caterer has to be present filling in the meal services inside the aircraft at least an hour before the takeoff time. This is a mandatory requirement for all caterers and they have to adhere to these restrictions. There has to be value for money, so they have to make sure that they are packing a parcel for the passenger which has good value for money. There has to be good, healthy, hygiene and safety things to be kept in mind. So any airline caterer who is providing meal service to the particular aircraft should not have hair or any kind of insect inside a meal. Well, that can really be disastrous because passengers can make huge hue and cry about the same. So hygiene is very, very important. Most of the caterers who are working, for packing meals for airlines, always it's mandatory for them to wear a shower cap, which makes sure that hair does not fall into the food when they are going about their packaging. Overall operational performance has to be good for that particular airline. Please remember, friends, if a caterer is not good with his or her service, it can delay the aircraft, which can be amounting to huge amounts for that particular airline. Well, passenger service on ground, it's very important that whenever a passenger is coming into the airline or aircraft, the crew is standing to welcome him and helping him with his seat. Once the passenger has sat down in his or her seat, they might have few requirements that they might call the press the call bell for the flight attendant. They might need some water, some newspapers, pillows, blankets, etc. Whatever is the requirement for passenger, crew needs to make sure that they are able to fulfill the demands if it is possible to do so on ground. Serving on-ground refreshments is important. So for a first class passenger or a business class passenger, they are given hot towels or cold towels. They are also given some refreshments like juices, fresh lime, etc. depending on what time of the day it is. Special attention is definitely given to children and elderly as well as handicapped passengers. So these are duties of the crew on ground. Looking at what kind of duties they have to undergo after takeoff. Well, immediately after takeoff, they need to tend to the cockpit crew. So the in-flight manager, who is the senior most cabin crew member, after takeoff needs to go inside the cockpit and ask the captain as well as the co-pilot as to what they would need. If they need their meals or they need tea, coffee or whatever the requirement is, she needs to first make sure that pilots are tended to. The other crew members during this period of time will start setting up the cart for the meal service. Now, depending on the time, when the aircraft is flying, if it is a lunch service or a breakfast or a dinner service or even a snack service, the other crew members in the front and aft of the aircraft need to prepare the carts or rather the trolleys with the particular meal service. They need to roll out the carts into the cabin. The first cart is starting from the first row and the second cart starts from mid cabin, which is the 15th row, and they go on serving passengers left side as well as the right side of the aircraft. Now friends, you need to always remember this, that giving out the trays always happens from window to aisle, but collection of trays happens from aisle to window, and that's how it is always done. Post the meal service or the snack service, beverages are offered to the passenger, whether they would like some tea or coffee. Two crew members will then take a walk into the cabin to check whether all passengers have been served or not, or just to take into account that nobody has been left out while giving their tray. Well, for meal service, it's very important that you present the tray properly to the particular passenger, making sure that you smile when you're serving a particular passenger, asking the preference of choice of veg or non-veg to a particular passenger. So meal services are important time in the cabin and they take maximum time during a cruise level. At this point of time, it's important that you do not allow people or passengers to move about in the cabin. They need to be seated down in their respective areas and do not use lavatory. That can actually cause a lot of havoc during the service. Well, after meal service has happened, they need to serve tea and coffee. Now, how does the tea coffee service happen? Inside the cabin, the first row will be getting a tea or coffee, whoever is the cabin crew serving them. For example, if a particular cabin crew member has started with tea, after she proceeds till the fourth row, then the next crew member is supposed to start with coffee. She needs to make sure that 4 rows are at least completed before she starts the coffee service. Similar to the next, or rather the aft of the aircraft, from the 15th row, one crew member will start with tea. After she has finished about 4 rows in the cabin, the second crew member from the aft will start with coffee, and they will always serve left and then right side of the cabin. Well, let's understand the galley. Now, as we have mentioned before, galley is the kitchen part of the aircraft. This is the place where food, beverages, as well as a lot of other things are stored. Let's look at the galley in detail now. The galley on the aircraft is typically includes not only the facilities to serve and store the food and beverages, but it also contains the flight attendant's jump seat. As you can see over here, there is a jump seat where the crew member needs to sit. Emergency equipments, storage, as well as anything else the flight attendants may need during the flight. So, well, the galley does not only have the food, beverage, it also includes the jump seat of the crew as well as certain other equipments that she might need. Aircraft in operation today mainly use the familiar airline service trolley system. So, that's used moreover by most of the airline. Coming to what is there in the galley, so let's take a look at that. There are electrical appliances, there are trolleys which are used to roll out into the cabin for meal service. There are food carts. Inside the food carts you have runners. Inside the runners you can store up to 4 trays, 2 in the front and 2 trays at the back. Beverage maker, which has the tea, coffee inside the galley, so you have your hot water channel from where you can make your tea and coffee. And there is also a water heater. Water heater needs to be switched on immediately after takeoff so that the water is hot and piping for the tea coffee service. Well, inside the galley you also have chillers. Now chillers are for making sure that you are serving cold beverages. If there is a juice service or there is a cold drink service, you need to make sure that these are cold and hence they are kept in the chiller. You have water supply, hot as well as cold supply. Trash compartment, which is a cart which is removed by the cabin crew to throw the garbage as well as all the dirty things inside. Water waste system, which is again for the crew members. And there are screen curtains. Now, what are screen curtains? They are just a curtain which kind of shows to the passenger that they are not really able to look towards the other side. Now, these curtains are there in the front of the aircraft so that the passengers cannot view the cockpit side of the aircraft. Some more information on galley. Use a considerable amount of electrical place. So, all the main appliances or switches are there inside the galley which has the main power, and in case the ovens are overheated or there's too much of power, it automatically switches off. So, in case of high current demand, there is a complete switch off in the galley. All systems have control switches and are located close to the galley. A master isolation switch for both electrical and water supply as well. So, please understand that galley is having a lot of electrical appliances, and hence the crew need to be extremely careful when they're using things in the galley. They should not overheat the galley that the main power goes switch off. Well friends, if we talk about customer service, how can passenger feedback be left far behind? This is a very important part of the protocols which the cabin crew needs to follow. Well, when do they give the feedback forms to the passengers? Post the meal service and tea coffee service, and after that the trash is collected. One crew member from the forward takes a walk into the cabin with the feedback forms on a tray, and these feedback forms are given to a passenger who would want to give any kind of feedback, positive feedback or negative feedback about their flight experience. Now, the cabin crew collects all these feedback forms and these are submitted to the airline head of department, for example, the HR heads, so that they can take a look at all of these feedback forms from passenger and try and understand what exactly can be improved about anything that they have a requirement on. So the main agenda of most of the airline is to give a perfect experience to a passenger, and that can only happen once they know the feedback of that particular passenger. Well, that is something that is really important for airlines to improve themselves. They need passenger feedbacks. Well friends, that brings us to a conclusion on this particular module on customer service under the aviation module. We have discussed a lot of things today with regards to cabin crew's duty and responsibility with regards to the customer service that they're providing inside the aircraft. Well, I hope you have enjoyed listening to this as much as we have enjoyed teaching you this module on customer service. Keep watching, more videos coming your way. Thank you for listening to us.